The FujiCast is an independent loading zone production.
Kev, if you sound just a little bit echoey, that's because you are in an entirely empty room.
I am. I'm like a goldfish in a bowl with no water.
You're in your old storeroom at the moment. This is the last broadcast from Kev's old storeroom in the old office.
I am in my cupboard. I'm in somebody else's cupboard, technically. Now.
Yes, actually, yeah, because just a moment ago we heard the new owner knock on the door, and effectively you are trespassing at the moment in your old office.
He came to collect the keys, and I said, if you don't mind, could I just stay here for another hour and a half? Because, yes, I'm in the cupboard recording some audio. Yeah,
you could say to him, look, I tell you what, I'll bring the keys back to the pub in a moment. Oh no, I forgot. There's a pandemic on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
luckily,
I was hoping you'd be in your new office so we could do a little bit of a look around your office, but you're not. You're in your old place, Kev. Are you excited though?
Yeah, Well, yes, I am. Yeah. My new place is literally 6 feet away from where I am now. It's much nicer, much bigger. Much bigger, and much bigger prices to go with it.
Yeah,
double the electricity, double the rent, double the rates, double the bills. But yes, I am, and I cannot believe I've taken everything out of this studio, which is tiny. Well, not tiny.
Well, it's not tiny, but it's
no, it's not tiny, but it was, and I've put it all in that much bigger place, and it's full, absolutely full to the rafters of my stuff.
Have you sure? No, that doesn't work, Kev.
And I've been to the tip. I've taken bags and bags to the tip. I just don't know where it's all come from.
You need a big box. You need a box, a crap box that you throw everything in.
The FujiCast,
and then you don't have to worry about how much space you have at all.
It's like old wedding sample albums. Oh, they're huge. They're all going to the tip on Sunday.
No, you need those, Kev. You've still got a business. You can't get rid of your wedding stuff yet. Well, welcome to another FujiCast. The last one from Kev's old studio before he moves into the new studio as from now, really. This time next week, I expect you to have a super duper sound because you're going to be in your new studio with your soundproofing that Gemma will no doubt have built by then. And all that.
It's actually already soundproofed.
Is it? Blimey.
Yeah, the guys previously they put sound paneling up on the walls.
Now I know why it's costing you £4,000 a month. Goodness. You and your questions today from our electronic mailbag, and of course also through the FujiCast private Facebook group that you're welcome to become a part of. If you want to send an email through, you can do. You send it to click@fujicast.co.uk. If you're not a Fujifilm shooter, do not worry, it's a big community, and whatever flavour you shoot, you're very, very welcome. Thank you to our friends who now support us on Patreon. I normally say at this point, Kev, what's your book of the week? But you packed everything away. There is no book of the week.
I know. I was running around like a headless chicken earlier looking for my books, but I couldn't find them. So there ain't one, I'm afraid.
There is.
Okay, there is.
I bought a book the other day, and I know you know of this book, and I know you know of this photographer, so I'm going to have to somehow bumble my way through, which normally books are your domain, but I've been buying a few more books of late, and so I'll do book of the week, which is Gregory Heisler's 50 Portraits, but you know of the book, don't you? So
yes, yeah.
I'm going to put it there on the Kev one job pile. One job.
You had one job.
Yeah, one job. Actually, no, you didn't. You had a lot more jobs this week.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, today we're hearing from Jayne Odell. I know you don't like to talk about what Jayne Odell photographs because...
don't even mention the word.
Yeah. How is your horse, Sparrow? Oh, it still doesn't sound well, you know.
Oh, no, bless Rosa. We had one lined up and then it went away, so she was heartbroken. But now I think we've got another one lined up. I can't really keep up with it, to be honest. It is like the Grand National. They come from behind you, in front of you, left, right. Some of them fall at the hurdles and some of them don't. And then eventually, ultimately, just like the Grand National, it just costs you money, doesn't it?
When you say when you say the horse went away, you don't. What do you mean?
Somebody else bought it, I think.
I thought for a minute it had gone to the glue factory.
No. But I think there's one. I think we've got. So by the time you speak to me next time, I should be even more depressed.
You'll be a horse owner. Whoa, Kev.
Oh, don't.
A trainer, maybe. Do you think you could
I don't think there's anybody from Newport who's ever owned a horse.
No.
That makes me quite proud.
No, I don't think it's the Valley of the Racehorses, is it? Let's be honest. Not down there. So that's what we got on the show today. Kev's still in Bunker Malmesbury, and you will be for a little while yet. Well, officially, when are you allowed to come here? If you want to come here at all, that is. I mean, you might decide now with your new bunker that it's absolutely fine that you're set up in the corner and the show sounds just fine. Thank you very much without coming here.
Oh no, I like coming to you because I can put the miles on my tax account.
Oh right. Okay.
I don't know when I can come. There's 3 dates on the timeline, isn't there? There's basically the first date, which is kids go back to school, I think. Second date where you can have your hair cut and go for a run. And then the third date where you can go to 100,000 people concerts. I don't know which one.
I think, funnily enough, the concerts, going to outdoor concerts with 10,000 to 100,000 people or whatever the figure is, actually comes before going to a wedding.
I keep having visions of Boris Johnson looking so serious with his haircut. And I know we all need a haircut. I get that.
I mentioned this the other day.
Ridiculous.
I mentioned this the other day on the Friday photo walk on the Photography Daily show. I said, do you think Boris is now doing this on purpose? Because nobody can have a hairstyle that bad unless they're trying to make a point. If you are the Prime Minister of a country, surely, look, if footballers are managing to get a haircut, I don't know how they are. Moving on, surely the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom could find a way of just presenting himself slightly better.
He doesn't need a haircut. He just needs a comb.
I know. Well, as I said the other day, Amazon. They probably, you could get I could go on there now, order a comb. It would be there by 10 p.m. in Westminster, no doubt. Yeah. Anyway, so let's get straight on with the emails and messages. Last week you offered a bit of a challenge, and somebody only went and done it. Kev
did. The postman Matt came yesterday, knocked on the door, said, "Oh, Kev, got something here from America for you," and so I have. Listen to this.
Go on. We're 2 years into this podcast. We've had plenty of emails and direct messages and Facebook things and tweets, but we've never had somebody actually get their pen and put it to paper. This
handwritten.
is handwritten. This is, I think, clink glasses on this one. That's
not even typed. Handwritten.
Actually handwritten.
He starts out by saying, apologies about terrible handwriting, but it's not bad handwriting. You see me. I would have made a really good doctor with my handwriting.
Yeah.
Right, so it's quite a long one, so I'm not going to read all of it out, but I'm going to read out the cool bits, the bits that are important.
Stand by.
So first of all, it's from Ted Strang, who is in Wisconsin, somewhere. WI, that's Wisconsin, isn't it? Yeah. Now, because Ted is the very first person ever to send us a handwritten letter, which I love, I'm going to keep it forever. We should all follow him on Instagram, which is at Ted Strang, TEDSTRANG. Kevin and Neale, apologies for the terrible handwriting. I'm sending this letter.
Sorry, Kev, stop for a second. Did he just say Kevin and Neale? He didn't say dear Kevin and Neale or anything?
No, Kevin and Neale underlined.
I really appreciate the efforts on sending a letter through, but it's the basic things in life, like just that nice kind of dear Kevin and Neale or hi Kev, hi Neale. I always think when somebody says Kevin, it's like they're a solicitor and you're in trouble.
No, this is great. This is good. I think this is all positive.
All right.
Kevin and Neale.
All right.
Kevin and Neale. And apologies for the terrible handwriting. I'm sending this letter on the hopes that it makes it to you okay. Yeah. It has been 20 years since the last letter I have written and mailed, let alone never mailing outside of the United States. This bit's brilliant. He says, tell Postman Matt, thanks for his hard work.
Oh, he even mentioned Postman Matt. That's brilliant.
I took it upon myself to take your comments on board in episode 168 as a challenge. Love the show. Keep up the hard work. And sorry for the long letter. Yada, 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 yada. And it even breaks it down. It's brilliant. The next bit is his background, and then the end bit is the question for the show.
Right.
So background-wise, to kind of paraphrase, is that he's currently got an XS10, right. But he wants something a little bit smaller, I think, as well.
Don't we all? Yeah.
So the question for the podcast: I love to have a pocket camera for holiday or places, something that will comfortably fit into your front pocket of your jeans. I've taken a few pictures of the Fuji XF10 that I just love and have printed out at 12 by 18 inches. 12 by 18, 8, 10, 12. I don't know. That's the thing about handwritten letters when people have scored something out. 12 inches by 10, probably.
It could mean feet. It could mean bus shelter size pictures.
Unfortunately, I sold it a few months back, and it's kind of hard to find now in 2021. The sharpness and detail of those prints are great, way better than any mobile phone that I've printed from. Are there any other pocket, and I mean pocket, no larger than an X70 or an XF10 cameras out there that you guys would recommend that he could do some more research on? I love the small size of the XF10. Some YouTube pocket or compact camera reviews may include a lot of cameras that might fit in a heavy winter coat pocket. He's looking for some smaller options. APS-C, maybe micro four thirds, 1 inch sensors. May end up trying to find another XF10.
What about the one we talk about sometimes that, Sean Tucker uses it. What's that one, Kev? Lots of street photographers use it.
Ricoh?
Yes.
Yeah, Ricoh GR something or other, isn't it?
Is it? Or GR? Is that the Harrier jump jet? GR3.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean there's a Ricoh. So the XF10 was a tiny little thing.
Smaller than the Ricoh, probably. I would have thought.
Possibly, yeah. I don't know. I'm not really used. I've seen the Ricoh. It is very nice, but don't use it very often. Or I haven't used it in earnest. XF10 was small as the X70. I think again. XF10, I had one on loan for a while and never had one to keep. I think they still sell the XF10. I didn't think it was out of production, but maybe it is. Yeah. Maybe that's why it's difficult to get hold of. But yeah, I mean, in the Fujifilm world, you're looking at X70, XF10. The hope of an X80, I think, is a long distant dream for many of us. Sadly,
we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, didn't we?
Yeah. I don't think that's going to happen by the looks of it. Well, I mean, you never say never, but one would have thought they'd have gone with it by now. XF10 is, if that's difficult to get hold of, then potentially you could look at some kind of the Ricoh. I think does Sony do? What's the Canon one? The Canon is called the
the tiny one.
Yeah, GX. Is it GX?
I don't. In fact, I don't know. I'm sorry. I would be guessing. I don't know that one.
So I mean, I honestly, I think the toss-up is between Fujifilm and Ricoh in that marketplace.
I think so, yeah.
For those tiny little cameras.
Depends how big your pocket is that you want to hide it in as well. I always found that the X100 really fits quite well into my pocket, but for some people that would be too large.
Yeah, maybe. That's me and you wear dad jeans, don't we? You know, dad jeans with big pockets.
Don't stick it in my jeans, Kev. Can you imagine that?
So I'd say potentially look at the Ricohs, but obviously with my ambassadorial hat on, I would be looking for an XF10. I'm sure you can still get them.
Yeah,
I'm sure you can still get them.
Are you wearing elasticated jeans yet, then, Kev? Have we got...
Always, yeah.
Do you? Do you wear?
Yeah.
No, you don't. Do you? No, you still got to be wearing button jeans. You can't be going elasticated just yet, Kev. Right. Hopefully that's social.
Well, before we finish, we have to. We have to make more of this. We need to. Hang on. I'm going to open a beer in celebration. There we go.
That's nice.
So that was for Ted. Yeah. Well done, Ted. Thank you so much, Ted Strang on Instagram at Ted Strang.
Was what was the address that he wrote on the front, by the way? Because Postman Matt, originally we wanted to set a bit of a challenge which just said something like Kev Malmesbury.
No, it was the full studio address, which is very good.
I want somebody to try that. Kevin Malmesbury.
If it had come today, it would have been the wrong address.
Oh, yeah. Well, that would, yes. Well, Postman Matt surely knows you've moved.
And I have only moved 6 feet.
Yeah. Right, here's one from Chris Guy. Hello, Neale. And also, really, this is for you as well, Kev. Question. Cast your mind back to weddings. Weddings? What are weddings, Kev? Weddings. I trawled through some old posts in the group and saw you use an X-T3 for video and stills. Can you explain your setup for capturing video and stills at a wedding? I assume you're using two bodies. Well, I've changed, actually. You've changed, Neale. I knew you would. XH now, I'm afraid. XH, well, I say I'm not afraid at all. XH1. I like the grip on it. I like the feel of the camera. I know, Kev, you're going to say there's many things that the XT3 does better than the XH1. IBIS plays a big part of my decision in this whole process, and so therefore now that's become my camera of choice. I like the way you said that. Like you were disappointed. In terms, I don't shoot video and stills at weddings. I did try it, and I just think it takes your eye off the ball, because I think you're working in two entirely different ways. And in one way, you're working really to shutter speed, and the other way, you're not, are you? You're not beholden to shutter speed when you're shooting stills. Not to the same extent. You're not looking for, I must get a 50th. It's just not that kind of game, is it? No. So I don't do the both together now. I did. I don't now. Would you do that, Kev?
No, never. I couldn't even think about recording video and audio and stills at a wedding. No.
Yeah, it does take your eye off the ball. But as far as the video goes, then 1024 is a staple. What's the one I've got over here, Kev? It's the to 55. It's the 18, isn't it? 18 to 55. It's just on there on the tripod. 18 to 55.
That's a good lens.
23 1.4 is very good for video work. What else do you use for video when you're using your XT?
I have to be honest. I've been using my GFX mostly for filming the YouTube stuff, but I still prefer primes even when I'm doing filming.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that sounds weird. There's no rhyme or reason, but mostly because it's just usually I'm filming myself in my studio. Yeah,
I like to have the ability to. Certainly, when I'm out filming, I do like the ability to use a zoom lens. Really comes into its own, I think. But funnily enough, when shooting stills, I wouldn't choose a zoom. No, I wouldn't. I'd go 56-23 really in that respect. So there we go. There's your answer. Your question, Kev.
There are people out there that do record film and stills at weddings. There are people that do it. So it is doable.
Yeah. No, I'm not saying it's not doable. It's a bit counterintuitive when you look at the way that you set your camera up for shooting stills as opposed to shooting video.
Yeah.
I know some people have their brains maybe have that ability, Kev, that ours don't. I don't know.
Yeah, well, undoubtedly, and I mean the latest, like the XT4 and things like that. Not that I have one, but the custom settings that you can save for video are much more specific. So you can lock off. But you're right. If you've got a lens with. If you've got a body with kind of manual shutter speed dials and things like that, you do have to change your mindset every single time.
I do keep coming back to the fact that I just really like the feel of the XH1, that grip, the sort of larger grip. I know that I'm not preaching to the choir with you on this one, but it's a camera that feels more natural in my hand, to be honest. Yeah. But that's all very subjective, isn't it?
It is indeed.
And when the XH2 comes out, whoa, then I'll be made, Kev.
You got a while to wait for that as well, by the sounds of it.
It might be a little while. In the meantime, XH1 is absolutely fine, isn't it, Bouquet Chicken? Yeah, he says yes. Right, your question.
Okay. Wayne Goodman. This is from the Facebook group, of course. Actually, the questions are flowing in there now, which is great. Keep them up. Wayne Goodman starts off by saying, "Oi, you two oracles and bastions of photography."
What?
I like that. We're oracles and bastions.
Yeah.
I wondered if you'd share your knowledge of printing images. Now, we spoke about this a couple of weeks ago, and we didn't really have any knowledge, but I'll go through the question anyway. I've got some landscape images. A friend suggested I could print for her lounge wall, but I have zero idea what I'm doing here. I'd actually like to experiment and see if it's possibly a door opening for selling some images down the line. And I don't mind throwing some money at it. However, I soon get lost when it comes to the sheer amount of options, sizing, types of paper, metal, acrylic, botanium. What's that? Botanium.
No, I think that's...
Ever heard of that?
No, I mean, that's in Chernobyl, I know, but you wouldn't print with it.
Botanium. Is that a real thing, or is it just a spelling mistake?
Sounds real to me, Kev.
Oh, no. Look, I'm being a complete fool, because then it says, okay, maybe not the last one, but you get the point. How embarrassing.
I'll not edit that out, Kev. I'll leave that in.
Yeah. But how do you personally choose the type of paper for your print, or do you just go with acrylic and the like? Do you have your own printer in your office, or do you have them printed with a company? And are there any companies you'd recommend in particular? Any help would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for the podcast each week. Never miss one that's aimed at us two bastions and oracles.
I've always thought that the moment anybody says printing to me, it just feels like, because whenever I've had a printer, and I've had a few now, and the last ad was a really, really nice one, which my good buddy Giles Penn found, who prints extraordinarily well. He gave me his old printer and said, look, have this, it will work. And it did work really well for him. For me, I just introduced banding back into my life. I just can't, me and printing just doesn't work. So I send it off. Loxley, I love Loxley's work. They take time looking at it. They're diligent. They've been doing it for years. They know what they're doing. So it just, for me, I just send it off.
Yeah, I do too. Generally, when it comes to things like, I mean, even if you send it off, you still have to choose the paper, the metal, acrylic, the
but the actual printing of it's then their problem, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, the printing. I in terms of finish and things like that, I just like matte paper. I don't like gloss. I don't like metal. I don't like acrylic. I hate canvases. Those wraparound canvases. Hate those. Oh. I just like simple matte paper. That's what I like. But that's very subjective and very much down to me. So I also had a pretty snazzy printer, a Canon Pixma something or other. Okay. That was, I don't know, it was about 800 quid, and then it cost about the same every month on ink. So I got rid of that, but it did make beautiful, beautiful prints. Yeah. But yeah, so I go to Digital Lab, you go to Loxley. There are plenty out there. And
Sim. I've used Sim as well. Both of those are good. Yeah. But I generally stick with Loxley if I'm just doing my prints. It's just and actually there are some great printers out there in terms of companies to do it for you. It's just that, I think when you find somebody, and you tend to stick with them a bit, don't you? And you can chop and change, but when it comes to prints, just zipping, a quid off here, a quid off there, just when I would find a printer that you like, get the test print sent to you, be comfortable and confident that what you output looks correct when they print it, and then stick with them.
And if it's fine art stuff like landscapes, if you are thinking about doing fine art stuff, get ready to have your brain exploded by color gamuts and profiles and things like that, because they will want you. They will probably send you a profile that you would install into your computer, and then you'd need to edit against that. And that's the only way you're going to get accurate colors or black and whites. It's actually even worse with black and whites.
Well, yeah. You don't want to end up with green and whites or blue and whites. And
Yep, absolutely. There you go.
Okay, good luck with that. Oh, yes, a couple of weeks ago when we were saying, come on, everybody, send your Facebook questions in. Now we've got a bit of a drought going on the email. You've got loads of questions for Facebook, and then it's dried a little bit on the email side. So click at fujicast.co.uk. Send some in. Here's one from Sasha Alexander. Kevin, Neale, blah, blah, blah. Great podcast. Love it. Listened from episode 1. Have a notebook full of tips and advice gained from listening to you both. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, question. During your early years as wedding photographers, when you were just wedding photographers, so no podcast or any other things going on, what did you do on a day-to-day basis to make your business work? What are essential everyday work matters that need doing? The reason I ask is that becoming a photographer and having to be responsible for my income, I find myself more often than not thinking, what shall I do today? Thank you, guys. Both of you really are an inspiration. Oh, and a kiss as well.
Yeah. Are you stealing my Facebook questions?
Oh, is that a Facebook one?
Yes.
Oh, right.
I'm looking at it right now. You stole my Facebook question.
Oh, sorry about that. It came through an email, though, so I just shoved it in the email folder. But I don't see the other ones that pop up on that special post that you created. I thought this was just a runaway post that I would nick. And I've been absolute. You've got me, officer. Here are my hands. Arrest me.
Okay, so what do you do on a daily basis?
I sit here and I wonder when the doors are going to open again. But I suppose in the days when we were, there's always plenty to do, isn't there? Contracts. Okay, so now I've separated my week a little bit back to what it used to be prior to lockdown. So Monday is always admin day, and that can be contracts. It can be anything to do with writing to suppliers. It can be paying commissions. It can be ordering albums. Anything that is admin related. That is all strictly now picked up and shoved onto a Monday. I suppose I don't call back anybody on a Monday, so if anybody phones me on a Monday, they're not getting a call back. I try to turn off Messenger and all that sort of stuff, and WhatsApp, and then Monday is all admin. And then the rest of the week, then that sort of sets you up to be a bit more creative. You can do a bit of retouching, can't you? You might be able to do some work on your website. But I think it's very important to actually plan your week out. So you think, right, on a Monday night, you think, right, what am I going to do tomorrow? Otherwise, you can sit there with an inbox full of jobs thinking, right, where do I possibly start?
Yeah, I think that the crucial thing is to be organised. One thing I learned a long way before I was a photographer, but a long time ago, was, the power of basically a to-do list. It sounds crass, but it's incredible. I've got this little, obviously I use Windows machine, so I've got this little application that allows me to put text on my screen, on my desktop wallpaper, and it just tells me on a daily basis, really this is what you should be doing today. And you don't always stick to it, but having just like your admin day on a Monday and stuff, it's like the difference between light and day when you actually do things in an ordered fashion than just thinking, oh my God, I've got somebody nagging me about editing. I've got to pay these bills. I've got to, I really need to do my website. Because I guarantee what will happen is you will only do the things you enjoy the most.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And you'll start with the things you enjoy the most, and you'll spend too long on the things you enjoy the most, and you'll never get to the things you enjoy the least. And the things you enjoy the least are often the things that are most important, such as paying the bills, doing the accounts, doing your website, doing your marketing, ringing the annoying bride's mum or whatever, all of that stuff.
Kev.
And if you're going that was just an interjection. And if you're gonna do something like this with a to-do list, I always recommend your to-do list starts with the least enjoyable thing. Do the least enjoyable thing every single day. When I come to the studio, or if I'm at home or whatever, first thing I do is my bookkeeping, which it doesn't take very long, granted, these days, but I hate it. I hate going into QuickBooks. I hate logging onto my bank and looking at my overdraft and all that, and I just hate all of that. But it's the thing I do first thing every single day, and I never end up like I used to at the end of every month, or worse, at the end of every year when you're doing your tax returns, going, oh my God, I've got to do 9 months worth of accounts. So I just do it every day, and it takes 2 minutes every day is much better than 3 days at the end of the month.
I was thinking having a firm idea of what each day means, such as admin Monday. Tuesday could be album design day. Wednesday can be contact venues, which is all part of PR. Thursday could be, for me, photo films. Friday could be pre-wed shoots, or if you do pre-wed shoots, maybe that could be a good day to do them because you don't want to be doing them at the weekend. Saturdays and Sundays, possibly weddings. Remember weddings. So, so have each day should have a firm plan, and of course other things will fit into it. I don't know if it was Alan Sugar or whether it was Branson, possibly. They used to say that every single morning he would not be available on the phone or email, because he had to do all because they have their to-do lists as well. So that would be their to-do list in the morning. And then in the afternoon, then you can start to phone people back and stuff like that, which I thought was quite a well-organised way of doing it. What do you use as your to-do list? Because there are some great systems out there, aren't there? To-do, which is ta-da, to-do, is it TUDEUX? I'm showing off my bad French now. But that's a really good piece of software. I think Matt DeValio, that we quite like, uses that.
Well, I've been using for quite a while. I was using Microsoft To Do. It's called Microsoft To Do, which is very good. Free and just fits perfectly with the Microsoft ecosystem. But there was one massive failing with it, in that it did not email me every morning and tell me, this is what you got to do today, I'd have to go to the system. And it's been on their roadmap for, just like most Microsoft things, it's been on the roadmap for decades. So actually, just last week, in fact, I changed. I took out a subscription for something called Todoist. It sounds like some kind of left-wing, like mafia or Russian dodgy company or something. Todoist. And it's really good. I like it. It's like 40 quid a year or something. All right. It does it does exactly the same as Microsoft To Do, but it will email me. But what I love about it is you can actually type in like the, you type in accounts, do accounts. And if you just type in the words every Tuesday, it will put it in, it will automatically do that. Or you can type in the last day of every month.
That sounds like To Do.
Todoist.
Yeah, but that sounds like the other one called To Do.
This is a ridiculous conversation.
It's a bit, isn't it? Shall we move on, Kev?
Yes.
Or just
organise yourself.
Or
Sasha.
get a piece of paper and write on it. That's the other thing you can do.
Yeah.
Right, Kev, it's time to talk about the horses. I still don't think your horse sounds right, Kev. I've never seen it jump. We talked a little while back about qualifications, fellowships, and today another fellowship photographer in the RPS, Jayne Odell, who is a tide watcher who has some super work on the coasts, just glorious stuff. But she came inland, settled in Newmarket, now makes the most wonderful photo stories and documentaries about the world of horse racing. And it starts in a wonderful way, really, with a bit of a chance meeting, which goes to underline that at any stage, your photographic world, your photographic outlook, your photographic interests are subject to exciting and unexpected twists, turns and opportunities. This is Jayne Odell. Jayne, 15 years as a photographer, photographing landscapes and wonderful coastal pictures that you have. Then 4 or 5 years back, your photographic eye wanders a little towards equine, and I wondered why.
Okay, so the coastal stuff was very much about my photography in the earlier days, and of course I was awarded my associateship for that. I moved to Newmarket about 5 or 6 years ago with my partner Sean, and I hadn't really ever taken any pictures of horses or done any sports photography or anything like that. And suddenly we found ourselves moving to the back of one of the stables. And of course, we've got hundreds of stables here in Newmarket and about 3,000 horses. And we found ourselves with a garden that backed onto the stables. And it intrigued me, the sights and the sounds of waking up to the neighing of the horses and the clip-clopping of the horses around the yard was kind of quite intriguing. I started to go out with the camera a little bit and photograph the horses on the gallops. I wasn't experienced in it at all. And then one day I bumped into the trainer that owned the stables at the back of the house. He then invited me to become his in-house photographer and to go out with his horses once a fortnight to photograph them. And so I did that, and I continue to do that now. But I also go out under my own steam and photograph them training in the mornings. But one thing that really caught my attention was the rhythm and the clockwork of the stables and their daily routine, which didn't change day on, day out. It was all weathers every day of the year. Yeah. It was something in the background of the town that people didn't see and people didn't get to experience. So between photographing for Charlie Fellows, who's the trainer that I work with, I started to capture little sort of candid moments of the riders and the trainer and the yard staff and the horses in the yard. So as well as kind of the fine art equine stuff that I do out and about, I started to build a body of work up that really looked at the behind the scenes of the horse racing, really. Up until that point, I'd kind of lost my way a little bit since the coastal stuff.
What, in photography generally, you mean? Or
not in photography generally, but as a progression from associateship to fellowship. The associateship, I was on a panel of coastal work, and I knew that the fellowship needed to be on something different, but I didn't quite know what that would be until I moved here. And that soon became apparent that I was getting the same kind of buzz and the same kind of excitement about the photographing the horses that I did with the sea, and I found it quite similar in some ways. My photography was about the capturing the motion and the emotion of the horse's training, and it was kind of similar to the tides in some way.
Well, we'll get to the subject matter in a moment. Although I am intrigued that Charlie Fellows, who's a well-known figure in horse racing, sort of spotted you out there on the gallops one day, and the next moment he said, "Jayne, do you fancy just being our in-house photographer?" I mean, that's a bit of a story in itself, but maybe we'll get to that in a moment. Let me get a handle on first of all qualifications, because you've mentioned ARPS and you've mentioned FRPS already, and we're going to come on to the panel itself in a moment. But why is that route important to you as a photographer? Because there's many photographers that will be like, I don't need a qualification.
No, exactly that. You can go out and just be taking photographs purely for the fun of it. Yeah. But for me, it was about setting myself a challenge, setting myself a project and working in a body of work rather than just as an individual set of images, bringing everything together and actually having a panel of work that I could be proud of and that could almost be my legacy in some ways in the future. And that was really the point with the RPS qualifications. I just wanted to challenge myself, I think, and be part of what's a great organisation in terms of world-class photography.
Yeah. So it sounds like it's a bit of a documentary about yourself, doesn't it?
It is really. It's a bit of a personal story. It's a bit of a personal development of my work over a period of years.
When you enter your panels, and I suppose this is the same for the associateship as being a fellow, although I know it's a lot more advanced as you leap up. But do you get to see the actual judging of it?
Not with the fellowship. With the associateship, you do. You can go down and be present while the panel review the pictures and then go away and come up with a decision. And it's very much you have it or you don't have it by the end of that day on the associateship. With the fellowship, it's much more of a long process. You are advised to seek online help from the RPS team to see if you're actually going in the right direction and if your panel has any legs in it, really. You then you can go on an online advisory day, or you can get a one-to-one tuition, and well, not tuition as such, but one-to-one feedback on the panel, which is what I did.
Right.
You then get a concise kind of critique on the whole panel as a whole, individual images, and also you send some additional images to see if they might work better. Then from that critique, you kind of work up your final panel and you put a submission forward and you send that off down to Bristol and you are either successful or not successful.
Do they give you feedback if you're not?
They do, yeah. My fellowship actually took 3 attempts to get to it.
Oh, right.
It was my 3rd time. The first panel came back really positively, saying that there was just a few tweaks that were needed to 4 of the images.
Right.
I resubmitted 6 months later, and then 2 more images were then successful. And then the final push was the last 2, which I gained it.
What sort of tweaks were they asking you for?
Well, obviously with a fellowship panel or indeed an associateship panel, it's not about the individual images. It's about how they all gel together and whether they work and have a narrative within the panel. And it was felt that on the final 2 pictures stage 2, that a couple of the pictures didn't quite hit the mark and they weren't quite strong enough in terms of telling a story as part of that panel. Technically, they were fine, but it was just about getting that narrative spot on.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned technical, because we've often said on the show of images, we talk about, well, it wouldn't win an award, but the but bit, but is usually important. It wouldn't win an award, but, because that usually talks more about emotional value of an image rather than perfection. Can you enter a picture that's not tech perfect or even tack sharp, but one that makes you feel, or does it have to satisfy everything? Feeling, tack sharp, tech, all that kind of stuff.
It has to satisfy everything in terms of you need to be technically proficient, but You've already kind of proved that to the RPS panel by doing your associateship, because you wouldn't get as far as applying for fellowship if you weren't technically proficient.
Yeah.
Having said that, for the fellowship, it does have to be technically good in terms of the picture quality, but it also allows you a little bit more flexibility and artistic license if it's obvious that you have processed some images in a certain way. I mean, There were images within my panel where there were no highlights in some shadows, and there were some purely white areas, but it was intentional processing rather than a inexperience of technical ability.
Well, let's talk about the subject then for the panel. Now, I sit on a day with the wind blowing the right direction. Practically, Jane, a megaphone's reach from Newbury Racecourse. And in the days prior to this rotten COVID nonsense, a race day in this town is one you either attend or become a part of in some way, because the good people of Racingland park their tweed backsides on any restaurant table and chair that can be found in the town. But I am a little bit like somebody who lives in London but never envelops himself in going out in London. I've been racing. I've lived in this town for many, many years. I've been racing twice, I think. Maximum, no more. What is it about? I know you said you're living next to the stables and you're hearing the noises, but what is it now that fascinates you so much? Because your body of work, your body of work is just expansive now, isn't it?
It is, and it continues to grow, really, and my passion for it continues to grow. I guess with my fellowship panel and my work, I want to kind of document the behind the scenes aspect of racing. It's very easy to go to race day and to experience the glamour and the glitz of a race day, but not many people are fortunate enough to be able to live in the town and see the workings of the town and the rhythm of the town. And it's that intrigues me and that I want to document.
And I think Newbury and Newmarket, Newmarket's so much more about, everything's about the horse, isn't it? Newbury,
yes.
Newbury is on certain days, but we go a bit further down the road, you get to Lambourne, which is the Valley of the Racehorse, and that's where all the training goes on. But Newmarket, it's all about that, isn't it?
It's all about that, and it's every day of the week, and it's, horses have priority. They have right of way in the town.
Do they?
Cars take, absolutely. Cars take second place in terms of right of way on the roads. There's about 3,000 horses here in Newmarket, and they're all out and about every day training.
And during COVID, has that changed at all? Have you seen less activity? I would imagine a bit, surely.
Yeah, it's changed things a bit. Obviously, the horses still need to be out training, but obviously social distancing and everything has been very much paramount in everyone's mind here. But there was a period in lockdown where I didn't go out so much with the camera until the restrictions were lifted. But there's so much space here in Newmarket that you can be, quite a distance from anybody or anything, and still with a long enough lens be able to capture the shots.
Right, let's get to Charlie Fellows, this story about Charlie Fellows. So you're out there on your gallops and you're photographing, and this mammoth of the racing world just happens to saunter over and says, "Oh, you've got a nice camera there. Do you fancy being my full-time behind-the-scenes photographer?" It just doesn't work like that, does it?
Well, to be honest, I didn't know anything or anyone in the town when we moved here. And I had been out on one particular morning out on Warren Hill, which is one of the training places. And a guy pulled up in the car next to me as I walked home, wound down the window and said, "Did you get any decent pictures of my horses?" Well, I didn't know who he was and I didn't know which yard he was from. But I did. I went home and had a look and I got a few pictures, and I lined up going round for a coffee with him and had a bit of a chat. And he said, "Do you know what, how do you fancy coming out once a fortnight, take a picture of my horses that I can send off to the owners?" Very much snapshots in some way, very much kind of point and shoot shots. And then it went from there, really. And I spent more and more time at the yard, got to know Charlie and the team much better, became part of the team, really, the extended team. And now I can kind of crawl around on the floor taking pictures, and the horses or the riders don't take very much notice of me. They know I'm a bit crazy.
Excuse the gratuitous question, but has this become a paid position for you?
Yes, my work with Charlie for the stuff that he sends out to the owners is a paid thing. But I'm often up at the yard, on my own time, and when I know that the horses are going to be doing something in particular, that I know that I could grab some shots for myself, and he's more than happy for me to do that.
A friend of mine takes these most gorgeous pictures. He doesn't do it now. He I think he did it for a couple of months and then sort of came away from it. And I was left thinking, no, there were beautiful images of horses that he did in a very Yarn artist Bertrand way, where he set up the backdrop and got horses trotting and doing whatever horses do in front of it. Look at me, I know nothing about them. But for me, they were gorgeous. They were fantastic representations of these hugely powerful, incredible beasts. But he always said, and he maintained, that he thought he got better pictures because he knew nothing about the mechanical process of a horse in motion. Now, when you started, of course, you didn't know anything about it. Now you do. Has it made a difference to the way you photograph?
Yes, I mean, certainly I'm getting to know a bit more of what the horses tend to do, what their exercise process is and what they do on certain days. So in that way, there's a lot more I could know. I read about it a lot. I live and breathe a combination of photography and horse racing at the moment to learn as much as I can, because I think it's really important that you know the subject that you're working with in the same way that I used to know the tide times of the sea. So yes, it is really important for me.
And are the trainers or the owners, are they particularly fastidious about how you present pictures to them now? That I'm sorry, but that motion's not quite right.
Yeah, for the pictures that I take for Charlie, it's very much about capturing the horses through the stage of their morning work. So it'll be the horses leaving the yard and walking out. It'll be the horses cantering. It'll be the horses galloping and the stride, showing the different strides. So to capture that horse on that particular morning doing the things that it would do. But in terms of my stuff, it's very much candid, almost documentary style. Yeah. Fly on the wall stuff that I really enjoy.
And what about the actual race days at Newmarket? Because I know race courses are quite guarded on who can go where and do what. Are you allowed in the weigh-in rooms?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to work with a couple of the jockeys quite closely that ride out for Charlie, and also go to the races with Charlie and the team in the horse box. So providing I'm with him and part of his team, then that's fine. But obviously you can't just wander in with a big long camera and camera lens and snap away.
Do you take a flutter on the day, or are you not allowed to?
Yeah, I do.
You are. I wondered if you were part of the team. It was seen as, it was looked down upon as, oh no, Jayne, you can't be spending a few pennies on our horses. But a sign of the times, and you mentioned it slightly just a moment ago. The socially distanced at the yard picture. As you say, it's changed how the town has been with the horses. You haven't seen so much activity, but it's not changed the training as such, has it? They've still had to be out there, and you've still been a part of it.
Yes, I have. Yeah, I feel very, very lucky and fortunate that I've still been able to maintain being part of it. And obviously, everybody's respectful of the rules, and it just makes things a little bit trickier sometimes.
Well, let's talk about the kit. I'm assuming here you need a thumping great big zoom. There's one picture on the gallops where I'm seeing them coming straight at you, and I was thinking, well, I hope she's not sitting right in the middle of that.
No, that one, I know the picture you mean. And yes, I was some distance. I was actually behind some barriers at the very top of the hill. Right. Quite a long way away from them with the long end of a 200mm, in those days, Nikon lens, to get that with a converter on. So,
but life has changed now, because you're a Fujifilm user now, aren't you?
I am. Yeah, after many years of being Nikon full frame. Yes, last year I took the plunge and went completely Fuji through and through, and I love it. I mean, the main reason I went over to Fuji because I wanted to go to a mirrorless system. I was getting a lot of neck problems and things from my day job as a designer, sitting at the desk all day, and then my other passion of photography, being out with a heavy camera, it was starting to take a toll on the old bones. So I wanted to lighten all the kit up a little bit, and Fuji just gave me the best of both worlds, really. So I love it. And
what about focusing? Because that's a very important thing when it comes to sport. I've spoken to a couple of sports photographers, and even though a lot of your work is at the stables, it is behind the scenes, there are times when you're photographing fast-moving objects coming toward you. How do you operate?
I'm usually in shutter speed mode. I'm usually wide open on the aperture and just letting the Fuji work out the ISO for me with obviously a cap on it. Just getting a series of shots, and mixture of manual and automatic focusing. So
manual focus.
Just kind of a little bit. Mainly single point focus, it's kind of a little bit trial and error. I'm still really learning the Fuji system, because it is, although it's a camera and it's the same kind of lens, it's a very different way of working. And so I'm kind of really in the early days, really, of Fuji, but I'm enjoying learning, and I know long term it's the best thing.
So in the kit bag then, what do you have? You've got the XT2, which I know you love.
Yes, yep. I've got the XT2. I've got the kit lens, obviously.
Okay.
And a 55 to 200mm zoom, which is what I use mainly for the stuff out on the gallops.
Yeah.
And I've just invested in a 23mm f2, which I'm loving at the stables because obviously it's very dark and you want a very fast lens, and I'm finding that's really, really useful.
Your world, or at least the website, is a festival of black and white, Jane. What's the thought process behind that? I couldn't find a Jayne Odell colour picture.
You won't find one anywhere. The only colour images I take, as I say, are for Charlie, but everything I do for myself is black and white. I've always loved black and white photography. When I started out in photography, I was really inspired by people like Michael Kenner and Michael Levin and people like that. So I love black and white. I think it tells much more of a story. It's much more timeless, and you can be a lot more artistic with it, really. I love it.
Well, you've got your fellowship. What happens now? I mean, these do seem milestones, but what's the next milestone? You can't have peaked.
No, well, I hope I've not peaked. I mean, yes, the fellowship was an ambition for the last 4 years. It's taken me 4 years to put the panel together and achieve this distinction. So I'm really thrilled, and I'm kind of riding high on that feeling for a little bit, just to kind of help it to work for me as a photographer. I've got a possibility of an exhibition in the pipeline, very early stages. I'd like to put a book together and things like that. So that's kind of the immediate plan. And in terms of my photography, I'm just going to continue what I'm enjoying doing at the moment until something else crops up in my mind and takes me on to my next adventure, I think.
Thanks to Jayne Odell. And as always, there are links to, Jane's work and all the other things that we talk about on the show at fujicast.co.uk on the show page for today. After this show today, Photography Daily is a good port of call if you want to hear more stories of how photographers work. And it's an eclectic week this week with a capital E. Or perhaps I should spell that Capitol with the O, because, today on Photography Daily, Brendan Barry, the man who can make cameras out of anything, including melons, big lumps of cheddar cheese, who went from being a commercial photographer to a photographer who teaches people how this thing works in a really original way.
I've got one that's a caravan, I've got one that's a shipping container, I've made them in cars and vans and all sorts of things. For me, one of the important things, as I've already mentioned, is being able to invite people into the experience. And going back to the education thing, the easiest way to teach someone how a camera works is from the inside of one.
And then I mentioned capital with the O in the spelling because on Wednesday, a feature-length episode with Pete Souza, Barack Obama's personal photographer for 8 years, who shot 2 million frames that document the most intimate moments of President Obama's life as Commander-in-Chief, including some funnier recalled moments too. I mean, Pete must have a claim to fame as having one of the only portraits where the tables were turned completely and the camera ended up in the hands of the man being photographed.
Well, it's interesting. There's a picture in my book. I did this coffee table book at the end of his presidency, Obama, an intimate portrait, and there's a picture in the back of the book, sort of like the author portrait, and he's the one who took the picture.
Photography Daily is on all podcast player apps or on the website photographydaily.show. Right, back to the questions. Kev, you're first.
All right. So we have. I've got two. Okay. I'm going to throw this at you, Neale.
You can have two.
Do you want a question about group shots, or do you want a question about photography becoming digital art?
Oh, blimey, they're two very good questions, Kev. Should we handle your favourite first? Group shots.
All right. Okay. In which case, this is from Jonathan Clapton, and always makes me smile when I see Jonathan's stuff. Bearing in mind that what we talk about as wedding photographers, because I photographed his wedding.
Oh, did you? Right. Okay. All right.
Hi both. I wonder if you could offer me some advice.
We'll try.
With Boris's roadmap back to normality now set out, it looks like we will be shooting.
Did somebody say Boris?
Brushes his hair with a balloon. With Boris's roadmap back to normality now set out.
Yeah, he said Boris again. Sorry, we have to say.
It looks like I will be shooting my first proper wedding this July. My clients have diligently completed my pre-wedding questionnaire. In the section where I've suggested that whilst I shoot documentary style, I recognise that a small number of group shots might still be required. They've specifically asked for one of the whole wedding party, 100 plus guests.
Yes.
as well as a couple of smaller ones. This might be failing. This may be a failing of my marketing, although I think I'm quite clear what my style is on the website, and I suppose I did ask. So he goes on to say, I'm happy to take a large group photo, but fear my 23mm and 56mm primes or 18 to 55mm zoom might not be up to the job.
Yeah, your 1855 will do it just fine. Absolutely.
Hang on, I'm on a comma.
Oh, right. Is there a comma, right?
So I'm thinking, well, Jonathan's on a comma, so I'm thinking I may need to hire a wider lens for the occasion, maybe 10-24. Right. As I'm just starting out, I'm trying not to invest in too much glass at this stage. And then he goes on to say, what practical tips do you have for taking the shot?
I'm not sure I'd use a 10-24. You might be sucking out the bridesmaids at the end.
Yeah, 10-24. Yeah, be very careful of the wide lenses.
Kev. Oh dear.
10-24 is the 10-24 is fine as long as you don't. If you shoot it at the 10mm end, the people on the ends are going to be elongate,
sucked out. And I didn't mean to say what I said. I do apologise there.
Don't be rude.
I'm sorry. Get back in your box.
But yeah, I think you covered there with the 1855.
Yeah,
Jonathan.
I think so. Yeah.
I think 100 people. Yes, I mean it does depend a little bit on where you are. Of course, normally what will happen I don't know where the wedding is, but there's probably a wedding planner or somebody who will say to you, you know, if you stand here or you stand on these steps or you stand at that window or whatever.
Yeah. Is he worried about having to do that shot, do you think? Because it feels to me like it's when he said, well, I'm not sure if I can't remember what the words actually were, but I'm not sure if I've correctly sort of positioned myself in terms of my documentation of what people should expect from me, whether he feels that he shouldn't be doing that or doesn't want to do it.
No, I think he basically said that, you know, he did ask them, so, you know, it's kind of in the mix.
Okay.
And bearing in mind it's Jonathan's first wedding, so it's always nerve-wracking having 200 eyeballs staring at you.
Oh,
while you point your camera.
Do you do many of these shots?
Very, very, very infrequently.
Yeah. See, I do. I probably do a big group shot of everybody at pretty much every single wedding. I would say probably in a year of shooting a normal number of weddings, there'll only be about 4 or 5 where I wouldn't. Yeah,
the reason why I don't, I mean, I absolutely despise them, I have to say. Not that I think that people who do them well don't do them well.
Why?
Because usually it's, you know, you get the wedding planner's like, right, everybody's leaving the wedding room. You go upstairs, you run up those stairs, stick your head out that window. And by the time you've got that picture, all of the emotion has been sucked out of the day.
Yeah, but that's our job to say. That's not when I do the... See, I always make that very... I go through that list with the wedding planner of the day, and you're absolutely right that many of them will say, what we like to do is when they've come out of the ceremony, we lead them down there, and then you'll be up there, and I'll say, no, wait a minute, no. Let them do all the hugs, because if we miss those hugs, all the love's gone, isn't it? And they'll be, but that's the way. But no, trust me, that I short circuit that straight away, because you're absolutely right. If you go into group shots, in fact, I say this to the bride and groom during the meeting, the pre-wedding meeting, whether it's Zoom or whatever, I say the last thing you want is and I use these words on purpose. You don't want some idiot photographer to be ordering your guests around when actually grandma's in bits and she just wants to give you a hug.
Yeah, quite right. Totally. I just don't. I mean, thinking back to 2019, probably 1 or 2 weddings had it. Yeah, but I don't mention it. You know,
the only reason
they don't mention it.
Not the only reason, but the strongest reason for. So I know we differ on this, but the strongest reason for doing a big group shot is, and it's another way I describe it to clients, is it's a get out of jail card. I.e., if you've done this one, you're not going to get great Auntie Maud come up to you later on and say, well, Peter, I wasn't in a shot. You say, yes, you were, great Auntie Maud. You were in that one. Oh, yes. And she'll sort of go off and have another gin. But you short circuit all those problems of people coming up to you, your uncles and your aunts, your second cousins removed, and saying, I wasn't in a shot. We didn't do that shot. You say, yes, we did. It's a big group shot with everybody.
But you also introduce the risk of the bride saying, right, we're going to do the big group shot for the stupid photographer up in the window, and Bob's the best man, or Bob's the usher. Go and get Auntie Maud. She's in the loo. So off Bob goes, and he goes to try and find her. And in the meantime, he stops for a pint. Everybody else gets bored and starts wandering off. And then I just throw my camera through the window on the floor, get in the car and drive home.
I have to say, I don't find that myself. If there is a pinpointed part of the day, and you're, it's the only part of the day where I really do have my voice heard. If you've got that bit, everybody, and you're to use a horrible corporate expression, stand by. Corporate expression coming up.
Warning.
If you're managing expectations and you're saying to these people, this is the big group shot. After this one, all I need is A, B, and C. Everybody else is free to go and have a drink. Then they behave themselves perfectly. And you get thanked for it as well, really. And then you've done your group shots. You've taken what I call I tend to call it a 20-minute group shot holiday in the day. No more than that. If you can avoid doing any more minutes than that, then that's, and then the rest of the day is documentary. But this way, Kev, you've ring-fenced a little organised time, pre-arranged, not changed on the day. You've agreed it beforehand. Some legacy group shots, 10, 20 minutes max. Because I think legacy is what they are. I mean, at our wedding, it was the last photograph of Mum alive with her brother and close family. I mean, we don't have anything else like it for the rest of her life. Also, it was the last big one for great grandma to be in the generation shot with her family. I mean, stuff like that doesn't naturally always come together, because the reality is we know it doesn't always happen. So sometimes just making a bit of that is okay, and those shots are part of the documentary, simple as. Then go back to your doc shots and everything we love doing, Kev. But I don't buy this idea that a few groups are the enemy of the story, but because I think they can be part of the story. But just don't make it a photo shoot. I'm with you on that one.
There you go, Jonathan. I bet you're glad you had me photograph your wedding, not him.
No, if somebody, hang on, Scott, support me here.
Stop it.
Absolutely. If somebody doesn't want them, fine, but most people do, and if they do, you've got to control the situation.
Yeah, you're dead right. I mean, when it does happen, yeah, absolutely. I remember having a conversation with. I can't remember. I have no idea which year it was now, several years ago. And it was like, no, we don't want it, but my mum wants it. And, she's absolutely dead. We got friends coming from Australia. She absolutely wants it. We hate those types of things. Yeah. And I was like, well, if you're the ones paying for the wedding, if you hate it, just don't have it. And, and I said to them, look, say to your mum that by the time we organise something, everybody just has tiny faces in the frame. By the time we've organised it, all of the fun and frolics and everything will have gone away. And the mum was just like, oh yeah, that's quite right actually. So they never had it.
But I'm going to be a bit of a devil's advocate here. And is that because you don't want to do it, or it seriously is not a shot that belongs in the history of these people?
I honestly, big group shots, you have people who their heads are tiny, generally, depending on how many people are there. There's always people looking the wrong way. There's always people who do not want to be in there. There's people picking their noses. There's people talking. There's people scratching their asses. Unless you have a proper editorial photographer who stages it like a Vanity Fair shot, it's going to look like a chicken's dinner. That's my view of group shot of group shots of the whole wedding party.
Did somebody say chicken? Should we move on to the next question?
I think we should. Yeah. That's my phone ringing. That's all my remaining wedding clients ringing. Cancel.
No, you've got a horse to pay for as well. Oh, thank God for the button box today. Go on. What's the next? What was the other one? I can't remember. There was a more.
Okay, so the other question was from Ron Whiteman, and he says that he anxiously awaits every new podcast. The FujiCast has become one of my top faves and must-do listens. Thanks for all you do. Question for each of you: when does a good photograph become digital art and no longer a photograph?
Oh.
I'm a bit of a purist, and yes, I use Lightroom and very limited Photoshop for minor enhancements. often in Facebook groups or Instagram, I see photos that have gone way beyond what I would call a photograph, in inverted commas or air quotes for our American friends. Interested in your thoughts on this subject?
It feels to me like the moment somebody changes the sky colour, that becomes ergo digital art. I don't. Is that what he means, do you think?
I guess there's an element of that in there. I suppose, yes, recently with Photoshops, you can just drop a new sky in, completely just drop a sky in, and it looks incredible. I cannot tell a difference.
I've not used this facility, so because I hardly use Photoshop at all now. Everything
you can make people smile. Honestly,
Really?
You can add smiles to people's faces.
Blimey, well, more than your 30.
Gemma's put in all pictures of me through it. She's been spending months doing it.
You're only allowed 35 a year. God, I didn't realise it was quite that. So the sky you can put in, even if you've got twigs and twiglets and things, you can still.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, it's very clever, and there's I think there's a application for that kind of stuff as well. I don't think I'm not dismissing that technology, but yes, I mean I agree with Ron in that there are some horrendous examples in the wedding photography world of people that have edited things in and out, and it always makes me laugh when people do eyeball replacements in group shots. So somebody's blinked and they've missed it. And they haven't blinked in a previous shot, but it's not quite as good. So they then
move the eyes across.
It can. If you do it well, you can't notice it.
You don't notice it. Yeah.
If you do it well, but if you don't do it well, it looks like ET. I see that quite often.
Maybe use the wrong eyes. You take grandma's eyes and stick them on dad,
left and right.
That's it.
So but kind of photo editing as such, I think there's a time and a place for everything. I don't know if purist is the right word to use, because even turning something from color to black and white is editing it, isn't it? And exposure, contrast, all that stuff. There are a lot of people out there actually who do they're honest about it, and this is a composite, this is digital art, and that it's a very valid genre.
Yes,
and those people are really skilled at what they do.
Yeah.
It's the people that pretend, there's in street photography you see it a lot, and if you dig into the forums and stuff, you'll see lots of arguments about people who they've got a great shot, but actually in the background was something misleading or whatever, and then they edit it out, or even worse, they introduce something to the picture like a dog running or I don't know, whatever, but and then you gotta claim it's a street photo. And it's not. It's a very good example of digital art, but it's not a good example of a candid picture. That's what I hate. I don't like that at all.
There was a time when people used to put stuff into wedding pictures like birds and things like that, wasn't there? Do you remember that dreadful... What was that thing that people used to do with that blooming dinosaur that used to appear?
Yeah.
The dinosaur chasing people.
Yeah, that was awful. But yeah, I mean, Ron, I think, there is a fine line in my world of what becomes digital art, but for other people that line is much wider.
Yeah.
When I do my colorizing of black and whites, that's the definition of digital art, because it's purely Photoshop, coloring, all of that stuff. It's digital art. Yeah, it's simple as that. But I love doing that. But I don't like candid pictures being claimed to be candid when they're not. I hate that.
There is the street photographer that we've talked about before, Lee Jefferies. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, it has been suggested. I don't know. Do you know the story to this of that sometimes the eyes are somewhat widened, or that's what I've heard suggested about his work? I don't know, Lee. I'd love you to come on the show and talk about this, but you've always refused whenever I've asked.
I've always assumed that he uses the bloat filter in Photoshop to do that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've not read anything to the contrary or to the positive of that, but I just assume that's part of his editing. Yeah.
Right. Book of the week. Now, normally at this stage I say, Kev, what's the book of the week? And you go into a full-on sort of book of the week review. But your books are at home, you're in the office, and actually you don't even know where the books are in the other office, which you're about to move into.
I'm not even in my own office anymore.
Well, so I said, well, I tell you what, Kev, I suppose I could. I've got a book here that I've just bought over the last couple of days. I'm starting to buy up more books, actually, Kev. So it's not my book of the week because
stealing my Facebook questions.
I know.
Stealing my book collection ideas.
Yeah, no. So it's not my book of the week. I don't do book of the week. Kev does book of the week, but Kev knows about this photographer, and I thought we could have just a general chinwag about him, and I'll tell you a few things that I found in the book that I found interesting. It was actually a book that was suggested to me by Lars Heggard, who is a fond follower of both the podcasts. And the book is called 50 Portraits by a photographer called Gregory Heisler. And you know this man, don't you? I think you've met him.
I've met him a couple of times.
So what's he like? Because he's
incredible.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely. It's like being in the presence of some kind of
genius,
spectral being.
Really?
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. He's just incredible. I met him Go Photo Plus. Yeah.
Did you? Was he doing a talk?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
He's done talks there. He was a regular there for a while. But obviously, GPP hasn't happened for the last couple of years now. But yeah.
Well, I should probably fill in a little bit on who Gregory Heisler is. If you don't know of him, he's been described as having the eye of an artist, the mind of a scientist, there should be a song in this, and the heart of a journalist. Renowned for his technical mastery and thoughtful responsiveness, he's photographed more than 70 cover portraits for Time, which reside in the permanent collection of the National Portrait Gallery. His images have also graced the covers and pages of Life and Esquire and GQ. The list is endless, Kev, actually. As a sought-after speaker, too, like you met him, he speaks around the world. He's taught at the International Centre of Photography, and he's graced the bars of Dubai hotels with an orange in hand, I'm sure, with Kev. I mean, he's just so talented, isn't he?
Yeah, very, very, very talented.
And was on the talk, was he talking about the way that he produces these photographs? Because that's essentially what this book is all about. It's beautiful. It's got this book. I think it was about £24, £24 to £28, something like that, on Amazon that I bought this. So it's available at the moment, and it's a big book. It's a beautifully produced book. Lars was actually drawn to it by this incredible portrait on the front page. But the book is all about his approach, what he feels when he makes a photograph. And it's lovely to look at books of incredible portraits made by incredible portrait photographers. But this one is actually also about how he felt, and in fact, it is kit as well. And one of the nice things is that he sort of demystifies this whole situation as well, and how complex you need to be as a photographer. And I wondered if that's what he did when he talked to his audience at the Golf Photo.
Well, I don't know, because I never went to his talk.
Oh, no, did you not? Okay, all right.
No, we just it was just the social. I was a speaker at the same time, so yeah, we just kind of hung around a bit. But yes, however, I've seen that book. I've flicked through that book many times in bookstores and never actually bought it. But yeah, so I know exactly what you mean.
Well, every single page has thoughts, or every single person has thoughts on technique about them. And I was reading the sort of the preface to the book, really. And he said, for years, my workhorse camera was a donkey. It was boxy and clunky, heavy, anything but sleek. It was a single lens reflex like a much smaller camera, and it boasted a bellows like a much larger one. It was most at home on a tripod, but could be handheld, if not easily, surprisingly comfortably. It may have been a brick, but it was a well-balanced brick. Can you guess what sort of camera he's talking about here?
Hasselblad?
It would be in that family. Now, I had one, actually, for a while. It's the Mamiya RZ67 or RZ67, depending upon where you come from.
Yes. Yeah.
Even the name's a bit of a donkey. But
that produced great images, though, didn't it?
Oh,
the ones I've
lovely.
seen from those cameras.
I mean, he talks about the what does he say about the sound? Here we go. It had a cannon blast of a shutter release, followed by the loud grinding of the motor advancing the film. Ka-chonk. And he describes it really well. It was a beautiful camera. It really was. I mean, you took your time with it, that's for sure. But the book introduces, and here's a character we talked about a few weeks ago, and we talked about what would it be like to photograph Danny DeVito. Do you remember?
Yes.
Yeah. The camera was on the floor. I was on the floor. The chair was a child's chair. Danny DeVito loomed large, killing the frame. That's the way he approached this. I was shooting him for a profile for the New York Times magazine that focused not on his comedic career as a diminutive caricature, but of his new career as a formidable film director. And he talks about the way he lights it. He talks about broad lighting. He talks about what are all the lightings, Kev? You know about lighting.
Yeah, there's Rembrandt.
Short lighting.
Short lighting, that's what I use.
Clamshell. You ever use clamshell?
Clamshell. Yeah, there's the lighting with those flash things.
But the great thing about this book is you see the way that he's thinking. So when he talks about broad lighting or clamshell or Rembrandt or butterfly, all these different ways that you can light somebody, then he will say why he used it, when he used it, and why he used it. And I think that's a great thing about this book. You get to understand how somebody really thinks about making a photograph. And
he's a great educator.
Oh, he is. I mean, it's superb. And he doesn't speak in techie language in this book. It's really laid out. I think a lot of photographers like to work in quite a simple way, don't they?
Yeah. Well, if you look at, I know one of his friends is Zach Arias, and Zach did a whole tutorial on, basically it was called One Light. Making portraits with one light, and simplify it as much as possible.
Yeah, there's one here with Al Pacino. The brief opportunity presented itself during a break. I was photographing Al Pacino and Keanu Reeves. Do you remember the film The Devil's Advocate?
Yeah.
That was
a film there.
That was a racy film. You can't watch that one with your mother over your shoulder, that's for sure.
Don't have her over your shoulder. Have her sat next to you.
No way, Kev. I'd go red immediately. But he talks about using a particular kind of camera in that one. He said, when you work with a DSLR or a rangefinder, there's literally no distance. You get in close, you make your shot, that's your portrait. But here he's talking about backing right away because he's using a view camera. And so he talks about that sort of the slowness, the deliberate sort of slowing down of yourself to move away. Yeah, and I think that's what for this. That's one of the reasons I bought this book, because I was thinking I want to get behind the mind of a master in this one. Number 19, Arnold Newman. What would it be? Can you imagine, Kev, being asked to photograph somebody like Arnold Newman? What would you think? I'm not turning up for work today. Arnold Newman is in there, the way that he photographed him. Oh, yes, John Glenn, 35. Do you remember who John Glenn was?
Wasn't he in Cagney and Lacey?
No, that was Sharon Gless. No, John Glenn was an astronaut, the oldest astronaut. Do you remember?
I do. Yes, I was reading about it all with the Mars thing recently. Yeah, actually, yeah.
He was a senator, of course, wasn't he?
Yes, yeah, that's right.
An astronaut again, as confident and rock steady as the photographs in 1962 when he was first an astronaut. And so he was asked to go and take his portraits, and he talks about how he made the portrait. And the most fascinating thing for me here, the moment I looked at the picture on the second page, because that's where really the thoughts on technique fire in. I looked at it and it became one of those pictures where you think, oh, that is my worst nightmare. I've just been given, John Glenn to photograph for New York Times or whatever, and you've stuck me in an office with a plain wall and horrible white ceiling above. And he goes into quite a lot of detail about how he lit him with, looks like a constant light source here actually, with very, very close to him, so it became very soft light. And it's that kind of stuff when you look at it. And often I think even pictures of people like George W. Bush, who's number 37, if you're asked to go into the White House, now I'm really looking forward to my chat later this week with Pete Souza, who was the White House photographer, of course, for Barack Obama. But Pete is another one, and who makes life really simple. He doesn't complicate it by bringing in an army of people with lights and stuff. He makes it simple, and I think sometimes that's the best way to approach what would be. If somebody said George W. Bush, there we go, Kev, make a picture. I don't know. I'd go into a tailspin of concern and worry that I wasn't bringing enough kit in. But, yeah. So there we go. That's the book. I'm not as good at doing book reviews as you, Kev, but that's Gregory Heisler, 50 Portraits.
That's pretty good, that. I'd give that 7 out of 10.
Would you? Okay. I'll put it over here in the 7 out of 10 pile. What was he like? Did you drink with him at the bar?
Yeah, it's like socially, yeah. He is a nice guy, and also just everybody's in awe of him. You know, he's just one of those people that's really nice and really good at what they do.
Well, you're like that, Kev. You know, when everybody's in awe of Kev at the bar at the SWPP.
I'd never go to the bar at the SWPP. It's way too expensive.
That's true. I think we've got time for one more question. It's got to be a quickie, though, Kev.
Right. Okay, I'm just going to go right to the bottom then. Denise Bass says, I just started using my old Nikon mount lens baby on my X-T3. So fun. I was out shooting the other day and tried to switch to a Fuji lens, but the lens wouldn't work. Oh. I realized it was because I had to turn off the shoot without lens setting. I couldn't remember where in the menu it was buried. I found it eventually, but I'm wondering if I could set up a custom button or if you know of any tricks for quickly switching between Fuji lenses and other lenses with adapters.
Like a
Nikon. Like a Nikon. Yeah, Nikon mount lens baby.
Right.
Yeah, so you've got a couple of options here, I think. I'm not sure if that is an option for a function button, but I'm fairly sure you'd be able to add that to the My Menu setting. X-T3 has a My Menu, I think. All my cameras are stored well away now.
I know.
Fairly sure X-T3 had a My Menu option. So in the My Menu option, you can basically build your own custom menu with all of the menu options. So that could be an option for you. God, how many times can I use the word option in one sentence? Other than that, I think, you just have to go in and out. But yes, that was the reason why it wasn't working, was because that shoot without lens setting was not correct. If you're going to be doing it regular, stick it in the My Menu option. If you have.
Well, good. There we go. That's Denise's question answered.
Is that the answer you were going to give, Neale?
Yeah, that's exactly. I thought Kev's just saying what I would say. As always. That's it for this week. Thank you very much for your company. If you can share the episode on Twitter or on Facebook, you're a star. Let us know where you're sharing, because we'd like to give those platforms a bit of a shout out as well. If you're sending your questions in, yes, we do need some more email ones. Otherwise, I am going to be stealing all Kev's. So click at FujiCast.co.uk. Click at FujiCast.co.uk. If somebody wants to send in, since you started this now, Kev, a letter, what do they do? They just simply write Kev Malmesbury? What do they do? Or do they?
Well, I think I think it's basically a case of going to the website, and I think in this case that Ted went to my website and found my address, my business address. Mm-hmm. But you equally have a business address.
Yeah, so, don't send it to me though. Send it to Kev.
Yeah, I'm gonna frame that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And next week we will. I haven't told Neale this, but I'm resigning. No, that was a joke.
You can't, because we got a special thing coming up next year sometime, which we can't talk about. Yeah, that's
true. Yeah, we got the special thing. Don't tell. Shh. I told you not to say anything.
No, I know.
We are going to do a Instagram competition.
Oh, are we?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, especially for our lovely Instagram followers.
Did we have a meeting about that?
No, not yet. We will have it next week.
Why not? So an Instagram thingy coming up next week. Thank you to Jayne Odell for being our guest this week. And we will see you next week. Bye-bye, Kev. Bye.
Bye-bye.
The FujiCast is an independent Loading Zone production. Email the show with your questions and words of wisdom to click@fujicast.co.uk. Email any complaints and political nonsense to our wives, who will deal with your comments in their own good time and in their own good way.